On charges of high treason and espionage for Israel, Egypt sentenced her to death in 1974. However, about 2 years ago, we received news of her death in Tel Aviv at the age of 87. Not only that, but she was also buried according to Jewish law. This is the story of Inshirah Mousa, the Egyptian. How did she escape, and what is her connection to Saeed Saleh? Finally, it was time for her father to take her to Cairo. She was not used to leaving her city often, but a relative's wedding provided her with this special opportunity. She would see Cairo for the first time and enjoy the wedding festivities. "Hurry up, we'll be late for the train," her father urged, and she quickly got ready for the trip. Inshirah, a daughter of the city of Minya in Upper Egypt, was born to a well-off family in 1937. She enrolled in formal education and managed to overcome the challenges of that stage, obtaining her preparatory certificate in 1951. She found satisfaction in her education at that level and, like her peers at the time, devoted herself to helping her mother at home. The train's whistle blew, signaling its imminent departure, while Inshirah and her family rushed toward it in joy. They sat in pairs on its wooden seats, waiting for it to depart. As the train started moving, the girl sitting by the window began to daydream about her future and what fate had in store for her. At the large wedding, there were many guests, including a young man named Ibrahim. From the first moment, he was captivated by Inshirah and kept watching her in amazement. He approached her and had the opportunity to introduce himself. Coincidentally, he was looking for a wife. He quickly got acquainted with her father and family and asked for her hand in marriage. Ibrahim Shaheen, originally Palestinian, lived in Al-Arish, Egypt, located in the northernmost part of Sinai. He worked there as an accountant at the Labor Directorate's office. Inshirah's mother initially objected to her marrying him due to the long distance between Minya and Al-Arish. But with her daughter's insistence, the marriage took place. Inshirah moved with her husband to live in his border town. Ibrahim had a greedy nature, always seeking wealth by any means possible. This trait led him to accept bribes, and it wasn't long before he was caught. He was fired from his job, prosecuted, and sentenced to 3 months in prison. After his release, he struggled with poverty due to his crime and the lack of work in his border town. June 5, 1967, was one of the most unfortunate days in the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict when the Israeli army launched an attack on the Egyptian forces stationed in Sinai. They destroyed about 90% of the Egyptian Air Force and advanced their forces until they occupied the entire Sinai Peninsula, stopping at the eastern bank of the Suez Canal. After that day, Al-Arish fell under Israeli occupation, worsening Ibrahim and his family's living conditions, especially amidst the war and his long unemployment. With nothing to feed his children, he went to the Israeli governor's office in Al-Arish, like others, to ask for food and aid. At that time, Israel, reveling in its achievements on all Arab fronts, focused on maintaining its gains. One of the most important means to achieve this was to obtain accurate information about its enemies, which could only be achieved by recruiting agents and spies within Egypt. With Ibrahim frequently visiting the governor's office and seeking permission to visit his children studying in Cairo, the Mossad officers saw him as a potential recruit. Knowing his financial situation, they showered him with bags of aid and finally offered him a job with them for $70 a month. The man agreed immediately, clutching the first money they gave him. He returned home happily and shared the news with his wife. Inshirah did not hesitate for a moment to express her joy and prepared for a new phase in their lives, filled with money and luxury as depicted by the Israelis. The next day, Ibrahim and Inshirah went to the Israeli military commander's office, where they were taken by an army vehicle to an unknown destination. As they traveled, they realized they were inside Israel, confirmed when they reached their destination, Be'er Sheva. In that city, at a Mossad facility, the couple underwent tests to determine their sincerity, followed by training on how to write secret messages and use wireless devices. They attended lectures about various military units and learned what information they needed to gather about the Egyptian side. After completing their recruitment, the couple was returned to Al-Arish. With coordination from the Red Cross, the Israelis provided them with a permit to go to Cairo, claiming they were war-affected. Cairo received them warmly, providing temporary free housing in the Matarea neighborhood. Not only that, but Ibrahim was also reinstated in his previous job. During that period, they were accustomed to traveling to Israel through intermediary countries. Just days before the October War of 1973, they warned Israel of an imminent Egyptian strike, but the Israeli side did not take their warning seriously. At that time, Egypt struck the Bar-Lev line and dealt Israel an unexpected blow. The war did not sever Israel's connection with its agents. They remained in contact. With increasing trust in them, Israel provided them with an advanced transmission device worth $800,000, capable of sending signals in just 12 seconds. They trained on it in Israel and returned to Almeria to broadcast the information they gathered. On the other hand, the Egyptian intelligence acquired a new Soviet device known as the wave catcher, which intercepted Ibrahim and Inshirah's signals and pinpointed their location in Almeria. In the early hours of August 5, 1974, the forces were at Ibrahim's bedside, arresting him and his children. But where was the wife? Inshirah was in Rome at the time, meeting with some Mossad officers. Upon her return, one day after her husband and children were arrested, she was also apprehended. Thus ended the saga of the most dangerous spies Egypt had known during the War of Attrition and its aftermath. On November 25th of the same year, a sentence was issued. Inshirah and her husband Ibrahim were sentenced to death, their son Nabil to 5 years in prison, and Adil and Mohammed were referred to juvenile court. The death sentence was not immediately carried out on the couple. They remained in prison, dreading execution at any moment. In a surprising move at the beginning of 1976, by order of the late President Anwar Sadat, Inshirah Mousa and her children were released as part of a prisoner exchange deal. However, her husband Ibrahim was not released and remained in prison until his execution on the morning of January 16, 1977. Inshirah stayed in Egypt until 1979, even appearing on an episode of Samir Sabri's International Club program, praising Sadat's decision to release her, claiming it was a humanitarian gesture to care for her children, and declaring that she had repented and returned to God. But not long after, Inshirah disappeared from Egypt forever. A few years later, Inshirah reappeared in Israel with her 3 sons, including Adil, the youngest, who joined his mother a few days later through Sinai, aided by a Bedouin guide, reaching the Israeli-occupied Gaza Strip. All this happened just 3 months after Israel and Egypt signed their peace treaty. Shortly after his arrival, Adil changed his name to Rafi ben David and converted to Judaism. Inshirah and her other sons followed suit, converting to Judaism and changing their names. Inshirah Mousa became Dina ben David, while Nabil and Muhammad became Yossi and Haim. 10 years later, in 1989, Inshirah stated that she had no regrets about spying for Israel, but accused Israeli officials of not appreciating the services she and her family had provided. She added that she felt bitter about her dire financial situation, which forced her to work as a cook for $500 a month. Inshirah continued her confessions, saying that she and her husband resorted to espionage for money, receiving $1,550 a month in addition to many other rewards. At that time, she lived in Israel with 2 of her sons, while her 3rd son had emigrated to Brazil with his Israeli wife. Egyptian drama did not miss the chance to depict their story, creating a notable TV series titled The Fall in Beersheba. Recently, the son, Rafi ben David, formerly Adil Ibrahim Shahin, appeared in media and press, discussing many aspects of their story. Meanwhile, the mother, Dina ben David, formerly Inshirah Mousa, passed away at the end of 2021 at the age of 87 in Tel Aviv, Israel, and was buried according to Jewish law.